Welcome to Break the Cycle with Bethany Dotson, the podcast for high achieving professional women who struggle with codependency, attracting emotionally unavailable partners, and who repeat dysfunctional patterns in love. I'm your host, Bethany Dotson, and if you want to learn more about how to break your cycle in love, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and be the first to know when a new episode drops. I'll see you inside. I want to talk to you today about how to eliminate self-doubt when it comes to dating again and how to gain massive self-trust when it comes to love and dating again. Because I speak to hundreds and hundreds of women and all very smart, all very achievement oriented. They know that they have this pattern in their love lives, but after so many breakups or divorces, I often get women on the phone to speak about working together who are completely avoidant of dating. And I often speak to women who haven't dated in years, sometimes a decade. And maybe they go on one or two dates here and there, and then it's immediate disappointment. And she immediately shuts down. And that's the black box that I'm not going to touch. I want to talk about how to eliminate that pattern. And the first thing that I want to say before we get into the how is to talk about some of the common mistakes or the common ways that I see a lot of women going about trying to eliminate their self doubt and gain self trust. And the first thing that I see a lot of women getting stuck in is what I call the research phase. A lot of women that I talk to think that they need to recognize the red flags sooner. I just need to recognize the red flags sooner, and then I will have amazing, healthy relationships for the rest of my life. And that's a great thought to have, and it's well intentioned. And yes, you do need to recognize the red flags sooner. But here's the myth that I'm going to bust. It's not about recognizing the red flags sooner, because anytime I talk to somebody, 99% of the time, they knew very early on, within the first days of knowing an ex, that person felt a little off. There was something about that person, that scenario, that just felt a little weird. So it's not about learning to recognize the red flags sooner. It's learning to actually do something about that sooner. So that's the first thing that I want to say. A lot of times people will believe that they need to research more. They need to research more about codependency. They might have been told by a therapist, I'm codependent, or they pick up a book or they go to a self help group and they learn I'm a codependent. They might believe that they need to research more on toxic personality traits. And I see this an awful lot with women who are just recently out of a narcissistic marriage or a narcissistic relationship. I've worked with women who have been researching for 2 years, 4 years, 10 years, researching, looking up articles online about narcissistic personality traits um, for years, and they are still petrified of dating. So it is not a matter of research. Research is helpful. It's certainly helpful when you are in the relationship and when you recognize, ooh, things are really not right here. This is what is happening here. And you go online and it can be very validating when you read an article and it's basically stating word for word, play by play, your exact experience that you're living in. That's great. But it doesn't change a pattern if you've had that pattern for 50 years of your life or 60 years of your life or 40 years. Most of the women that I work with are in midlife, so they're 40, 50, 60 plus, and they've never had a great relationship. They're great at other things. They're great at their careers. They're great at raising children. They're great at being the best friend that everybody leans on. They're great at being the responsible family member that takes care of parents while other family members are irresponsible. They're great at doing for everybody else but themselves. I digress. Research phase. Getting stuck in the research phase is a common way that I see women trying to go about gaining some confidence in themselves. I just need to know what signs to watch out for next time so that I can pick out those signs and be aware of them sooner. And again, like I said before, it's not about being aware of the red flags sooner because nearly everybody that I talked to was aware extremely early on, if not from day one. But it's about doing something about that sooner. So, research phase is one way. And this is trying to arm yourself with enough information. This also helps people get a sense of control. And this is going to lead into the other common mistake, the other common fallacy that I see. When you've been in these relationships, let's back up for a second. When you ignore red flags in relationships, you are trying to gain a sense of control. And this is often because you don't want to feel bad. You don't want to feel rejected. You don't want to feel lost. You don't want to feel abandonment. You don't want to feel like you've wasted your time and wasted your so much emotional resources on this person. You don't want to give up the fantasy. It's like a drug addict. A drug addict keeps using because he's getting high and he's getting a payoff out of it. The same thing happens when you ignore red flags. You're getting a payoff from ignoring those red flags. And it's only when the payoff of ignoring that becomes too great that then you're finally ready to change. So when you ignore red flags and then you leave and you get out of that relationship, when you ignore red flags, you're trying to gain a sense of control in that relationship. And then when you get out of the relationship, researching can give you a little bit of control. The other way that I find people trying to eliminate their self doubt and trying to gain trust in themselves is by doing more and they meaning they do all of the right things. And the operative word here is doing. They get into therapy, they do all of the research, they get a bunch of books off of Amazon, they research on codependency, they research on the narcissist, they research on psychopaths, they get all the really good books. They go on a retreat somewhere across the world to clear their mind. They take up a couple hobbies. They start volunteering more because they have more free time on their hands and they're going home to an empty house now. And they may chase a promotion at work. They may take on more projects at work. So they're doing more and they're doing on the surface all of the right things to make themselves feel better. But the fallacy here and the trap is that she spent a lot of time, and you probably spent a lot of time doing more than your fair share in a toxic relationship. A toxic relationship happens when you are leaning way over the boundary line to try to get your needs met from somebody who keeps leaning back. This is also a codependent relationship. This person is unavailable for you due to their stuff, their trauma, their fears, their issues, their addictions. And rather than recognizing that, your pattern is to lean in and try to help them get over here. That never works. But again, we all fall into that pattern, right? And it's hard to break if this has been your MO for your entire life. So when you find yourself doing, the trap about doing is that you can take up a bunch of hobbies. You can go join a new gym or a new Orange Theory class. You can go take a trip to Costa Rica and go on a women's empowerment retreat and take yourself out of your environment for a week and feel good. You can read a bunch of books. You can switch careers. You can get another job promotion. You can go take dance classes. You can go volunteer more. You can do all of these things. And I see a lot of women applying this strategy. They're doers, they're achievers. If you find yourself being an achiever in your life, a lot of the unconscious motivation for being an achiever is because you don't feel good enough inherently. And that can come from being raised in an unhealthy childhood stuff is usually where that comes from. A telltale sign of someone who has a narcissistic parent or someone who has an emotionally abusive parent is that they grow up as an adult and they become an overachiever because they don't feel good enough about themselves. And then they often, because they don't feel good enough, then attract partners who don't feel good enough about themselves. And it becomes this toxic victim abuser pattern. So when you are doing and you're doing all of these things, number one, you're really applying the same strategy that you did to try to keep a bad relationship going. You were doing more. And a lot of the women that I speak to have done all of the right things, but they're still not in a good relationship, or that's been 10 years and they haven't been on a date because their psychology really hasn't changed. Their subconscious belief systems and their programming really hasn't changed. They're still the same inside. They're still the same traumatized, scared little girl on the inside. They're just now doing more stuff to try to make them forget about that part of themselves, to try to distract them from feeling lonely every day, to try to distract them from thinking about their ex because they keep thinking about how fast he moved on with someone new and how he's like living this happily ever after life. And the kids come home after their weekends with him and they talk about how much fun they're having, and she's sulking and feeling miserable and feeling sorry for herself and her life sucks. So they do all of these things to try to create more control in their lives, to try to create a sense of trust in their lives, to try to overcome the doubt that they're living with about themselves day in and day out when they lay their head down at the end of the day. But doing more is not the answer. How do you eliminate self doubt when it comes to dating? And by the way, a lot of the women that I speak to are doing a lot. They're doing a lot, right? They feel like, and a lot of times they've had so much pain in relationships that they build their life up in such a way that there's absolutely no room for a guy to get in. And they go on a few dates with somebody. They might try dating because there's something in their heart that keeps nudging them to open themselves to a relationship. They go on a few dates here and there, and then it's immediate disappointment. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And they have this mindset of, I don't want a relationship to mess up my life because relationships have messed up my life for decades, and I'm not doing that again. So they kind of swing their pendulum to the opposite severe side of, and they don't their life has built up. They seek so much control in their life that there's no space, time space, emotional space, vulnerability space for somebody to enter. And that's a tragedy because I speak to a lot of women that go years, sometimes decades, and they haven't been on a date in that many years. No hand holding, no dinners, no nothing, no deep conversations because that feels a little too out of control. And they have the story that they're telling themselves is, it's going to be too much for me to go through the turmoil to get to that. And so, how do you eliminate self doubt? How do you get to trusting yourself when it comes to dating, when it comes to love? So, research is not the answer. Staying chronically busy is not the answer. Chronic busyness is often a trauma response when you have unhealed emotional trauma. Filling your life with activities, helpful, but not the answer. You gain confidence in yourself and you overcome the self doubt when you, number one, have some sort of a daily routine of emotional regulation. So, what is emotional regulation? Emotional regulation can be mindfulness work. It can be how you're reacting and responding to things in your life, stressors in your life. It's a pattern of rewiring your psychology, rewiring your brain and your body. Here we give clients somatic therapy work to do because this is proven in research to be effective for healing complex trauma, which is what happens inside of toxic relationships. May have been what happened in childhood. Prolonged exposure to emotional or psychological or physical abuse over a prolonged period of time. And there were many incidences of that, little small mini traumas over many years, right? That's complex trauma. And it can really do a number on your ability to attract a healthy relationship. In fact, one of the biggest ways trauma rears its ugly head is when you're in relationship, because a relationship, especially an intimate one, is going to trigger all of your old stuff that you have shoved down, out of sight, out of mind. You've tried to outrun it, you've tried to overwork it, outwork it, you've tried to overachieve your way out of it, all of these things. So you need to have some type of daily mindfulness, emotional regulation practice, something that is helping you to rewire your brain and your nervous system out of a trauma response. And a lot of people that I talk to, they left a bad relationship. They've been single on their own for many years, but they still are doing more than their fair share in their job environment. They may be in a toxic job environment. They're doing more than their fair share for family members. So they're just taking their codependent pattern out of the intimate relationship that was toxic that they left. And then they're just putting it on other areas of their life. And in order to break that pattern, not just in your romantic relationships, you need to be doing something on a daily basis that's creating a lot of self-awareness and rewiring how you perceive scenarios, how you perceive relationship scenarios, how you perceive conflict, how you show up to conflict. That's going to give you the tools and the skill set to remain calm and peaceful in your heart on a regular basis and be able to get through difficult situations with minimal emotional suffering. A lot of the women, the vast majority of women that I talk to, they're out of the relationship, but they still feel extremely stuck in their lives. And it's because they don't have a large emotional bandwidth. They're traumatized, so their pattern is usually staying chronically busy. When they're not at work, then they're maybe doing activities outside of work or taking on projects at home or taking on extra work. Sometimes they're single moms and they've got a lot going on, and they just keep themselves nonstop, wall to wall, overwhelmed, borderline burnt out in their lives, and they don't have time to breathe. And when you approach dating or love from that place, and you have 40 years of heartache and abuse and trauma in your rearview mirror, you are not more 9 times out of 10 going to make good choices because your psychology isn't in an optimal state yet. So you need to be using a daily practice. And I say daily because you need the reps. My coach says you need the reps. You need to get good at it. You need to make this a habit. Most people that I work with initially, their habit is they wake up immediately anxious. They go to sleep immediately ruminating about an ex, and they do that for weeks, months, and years on end. They wake up worried about their kids or wake up worried about work or wake up, and their life becomes this small little container. And they think about what it would be like to date somebody. They think about what it might feel like to be in a healthy relationship. But because they're not emotionally living in that state and they're living in fight or flight, they have a perception that's impossible or it's going to take a long time or that's too far away or why even bother. And they start to create stories and justifications why it's easier for me to stay stuck. And I will be the first to tell you from my own personal experience and then from working with clients, this is like a human wide thing. People will fight harder to stay in their comfort zone and to stay in pain than they will to move into the unknown and to be successful, because most people are not just fearful of attracting another narcissistic relationship, they're actually more fearful of getting into a healthy relationship because on some level, somewhere, that feels really out of control. And she's built her entire life around trying to maintain control in a toxic relationship by ignoring red flags and then trying to get her partner to fix himself or herself, and then trying to remain in control in her life outside of a relationship by working really hard on herself, doing a bunch of activities that she's supposed to be doing to rebuild herself and be healthy again, and avoiding dating because that's a scary thing. And so the idea of actually letting all of that strategy and that coping go to just allow somebody in really and see all of your ugly parts, that's actually scarier for a lot of the people that I talk to and work with. So that's the first thing is you need to have, in order to overcome and eliminate self-doubt when it comes to love and dating again, and to really learn to trust yourself, you need to be practicing some type of daily emotional regulation practice. Here again, we use somatic work, which is mind body, breath work, guided meditation, things that are specifically designed to help somebody's brain unwire itself from a trauma response and wire itself into a place of it's safe for me to relax. It's safe for me to be who I really am. It's safe for me to be vulnerable. It's safe for me to share and express myself. It's safe for me to voice my concerns during a conflict and to then do something about that on a daily basis. The second thing that needs to happen, and this is what essentially I invite my clients to do, you have to put yourself in a scenario on a regular basis, weekly, if not daily, where you are going to face rejection. I'll say that again. You need to be putting yourself on a daily or weekly basis where you are going to be faced with rejection, where you're going to put yourself in the hot seat of being told no, being told to fuck off, being told, I'm not interested in you. You need to be you need to be putting yourself in the seat of potential loss or rejection on a regular basis. Some people might look at that as exposure therapy, but this is really the only way. You need the emotional regulation work on the front end before you do this stuff. Otherwise, you're going to fall apart if you get over here and do things out of your comfort zone that are going to cause you to feel rejection. So, you need the emotional regulation stuff on the front end, but then you need to be bringing that into your life. And this is where a lot of people get stuck with therapy because they learn a lot of insights. They learn that my dad was abusive and this is why I attract abusive men. But then they don't really know what to do with that in their life. Or they know in their heart they should be doing these things. But like I said before, the comfort zone is too alluring and too addictive and too seductive that if left up to themselves, they're just going to keep doing what they've always been doing because that's what's working. And the idea, especially when you've had bad relationships and you've fought really hard to keep those going, the idea of putting yourself in the face of rejection is going to feel not, it's like, I'd rather put forks in my eyeballs. I don't want to do that. But that's what needs to happen. And here, when we work with clients, starting in week 2, I have them do things in their life socially and in relationship scenarios that are out of their comfort zone, that they have to be willing to feel like an idiot for a moment, to feel stupid, to feel like somebody's going to reject them and say no, and to feel lost, because it's only when you know how to navigate those scenarios effectively and with confidence, that's what starts to break patterns. And I see a lot of women, like I said before, the myths or the fallacies, that the traps that they get into, needing to learn more information, needing to do more, but then avoiding any and all scenarios that put them at risk for possible rejection or abandonment. And rejection, putting yourself in scenarios where you could potentially be rejected, like dating, like being vulnerable on a date, like opening up about your past on the fifth date with somebody that you really like, and opening yourself up to potential judgment from that person, opening yourself up to potential judgment from friends or family. These are the things that need to be done on a regular basis. So, just to quickly recap, 2 common myths when you're trying to eliminate self doubt and gain massive trust in dating or love. You don't need any more information. It's helpful, but most of the time, it does not translate to making different choices in your love life, at least on a consistent basis. And this is especially true for you if you have been avoiding dating because it feels too unsafe and it feels too uncertain. Doing more therapy, doing more reading, doing more podcasts, doing more YouTube videos, doing more retreats, doing more volunteering, doing more hobbies, doing more whatever is not bad. Right? But if you were doing a lot to keep a bad relationship going, it's really not the doingness that needs to change. And a lot of times I do work with overachievers who they're really strong in their career, but then they also strong in their career because there's an underlying motivator of I'm not good enough. Therefore, I have to work really hard to prove myself and be successful in my career. So doing this is not what needs to change. It's changing deeply your psychology and overcoming pattern behavior that has been in play in your life. Sometimes you're not even aware of this pattern behavior, right? It just happens. You just find yourself in the same scenarios, the same pattern again and again in relationship. That's usually some type of trauma programming happening, right? So learning how to overcome that and shift your psychology and then make different choices in the moment. The way that you do that is by having some kind of daily practice that builds the skill of emotional regulation. A lot of people emotionally regulate by being chronically busy, being a workaholic, shopping, having sex with a lot of people, drinking a lot. These are coping skills that temporarily take away pain, but they produce long term, they just perpetuate pain. Building emotional regulation skills are uncomfortable at first because you have to be willing to feel your feelings and face your fears head on. But the benefit and the lifelong payoff of this is that you you are less drawn to unhealthy coping for years to come because you are emotionally regulating yourself and you're handling bad feelings the moment they come up in a productive way where you're not suppressing your emotions, you're not repressing them, you're not spiraling out into anxiety and building a lot of fear-based stories. So that's the first how on to overcome this and gain more self-trust in yourself. The second thing is by putting yourself on a consistent regular basis in relationship scenarios where you could potentially be rejected or abandoned or feel some kind of loss or feel some kind of discomfort, because that is your moment to deal with that emotion in a more productive way. Whereas before, you've been dealing with those emotions from a trauma way, people pleasing, ignoring red flags, working harder than you need to, trying to fix somebody else so that you can feel better, codependency. That is not, none of those things equals a healthy, balanced relationship. So, if you resonated with what I shared with you today, if you're a smart, high achieving woman, you're successful in your career, you've had a lifelong pattern of being unsuccessful in love, and you are ready to put that at rest for the rest of your life, gain soaring confidence, learn to break out of maybe a small little box that you've put yourself in after a divorce or after a bad relationship, open yourself up to dating and not dread it, but really fall in love with the process, opening your heart again and putting yourself in these vulnerable situations and overcoming your fears that are stopping you from having that type of a relationship, then go to BethanyDotson.com/talk and book a free breakthrough call. We'll have a really honest, deep dive conversation with you about where specifically you're stuck. And then, most importantly, we're going to talk about what you really want. Most people do not, and I just say this from experience, do not think about what they really, really want because they have so many stories and beliefs in the way. They want something over here, but the moment they start thinking about that, then they come up with an excuse of why they can't have it. Oh, I'm too old. Nobody's going to like me on a dating app, or I really want to go to Paris, but I don't have anybody to go with, so I can't go. And oh, but I really want to do this. Oh, but I don't have this yet. And I need to wait a little longer. And so you, most people live constantly in a state of internal conflict that they want something, but the BS, the bullshit, or the belief systems in their psychology are stopping them from having it. And if you have belief systems and you have trauma and you have pattern behavior that is standing in your way and you're like, I want this, but I don't know how to get this. This is where we help. Go to bethanydotson.com/talk, book a free breakthrough call. We'll be very honest if we can help you, given where you are in your journey. If we don't feel that we can help you, then we're going to steer you in the next direction that's right for you. Maybe that's a different type of coaching. Maybe you need to be really certain that you're ready to leave an ex or go fully no contact. Just a couple of quick caveats. This is for women who are single or divorced. You are done with an ex, right? We can't help you if you have one foot on the fence hoping it's going to work out and the other foot on the fence in freedom. You got to be both feet on the fence in freedom. Okay. You have stability in other areas of your life. You've got a great job. You've got a great career. You have a good, solid social network or social support system. You got other areas of your life are working well. And we say this because complex trauma specifically is best healed when you've got other areas of your life solid and secure, right? If you're struggling financially, if you're living out of your car, if you just got fired and you don't know how you're going to pay your rent, these things need to be taken care of first before we can do more deeper work on your psychology and healing that trauma pattern. So if that's you, bethanydotson.com/talk, we'll have an honest conversation about whether or not we can change your life. I will talk to you soon and have a beautiful day. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. A brand new episode drops each week. Be sure to click and subscribe. And remember, healing trauma, codependency, and your lifelong pattern in love does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance and evidence-based methods. And I've helped hundreds of incredible women from all over the country heal betrayal trauma and reclaim their confidence while falling wildly in love with their own lives and attracting healthy relationships. If you like what you heard today and you want to see if you're fit to work with us, go to bethanydotson.com/talk. That's bethanydotson.com/talk and book a call to speak with us today. We'll get on the phone for about 45 minutes and get you crystal clear on 3 things. The real reason you keep attracting dysfunctional relationships, even if you know better or even if you've done tons of work on yourself. What you really want in a relationship, how you want to feel emotionally every single day in your life, and what lifestyle changes you want to make. And then number 3, the exact strategy you need to be using to get there. Again, healing trust issues, codependency, and a lifelong pattern does not happen without expert guidance. We've helped hundreds of women across the country heal complex trauma, codependency, and have the healthiest relationships ever, both with themselves and with others. Go to bethanydotson.com/talk to book your call today. I'll see you on the next episode.